This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, episode 708. 15 ways to make the Google Classroom experience more excellent for everyone, with Vicki Davis. Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, where you'll discover ways to become a more remarkable teacher today. Your host is author, educator, speaker, and mom, the Cool Cat teacher, Vicki Davis. Today, Vicki gives you yet another peek into her classroom, this time to share her tips for getting the most out of your Google Classroom. Enjoy!
Today's sponsor is Hapara, the company that has helped my school make more out of Google Classroom. Stay tuned at the end of the show to learn how Hapara can help your teachers, students, and administrators reach and engage more students. So today I would like to give you 15 ways to make the Google Classroom experience more excellent for everyone. So first of all, remember your habits and your classroom procedures. Harry Wong's The First Day of School is one of my favorite books just because it helped me level up so much as a teacher to have those classroom procedures. When my students go into Google Classroom, I always want them to go to Classwork, view my classwork. The stream to me is not very helpful because it's kind of like stream of consciousness and sometimes it's just not in the right order, but kids tend to gravitate to the stream. So I always want them to go to Classwork, view my classwork. That's where I want them to start. And to check email. So those are two habits that I try to teach my students to do every day. Classwork, view my classwork, or check email. Now, I will say today we have a sponsor, Hapara, and while they don't have anything to do with the content in it, my procedure has changed for what I want my students to look at every day. They have a student dashboard that you'll hear more about at the end of the show that basically puts every single classroom in one place. We've been looking for a simpler way. And the more excellent students do go to Classwork, view my classwork in all their classes, but sometimes teachers don't put due dates, and that can throw students because they don't see it on the front, and they just need one page to look at everything. So for us, we're using Hapara, Hapara, and students have a student dashboard. So I believe it's mystudentdashboard.com, and they log in with their Google account. Everything's already there for them, and it's just a real simple one-pager. So think about how are my students going to consistently find their information. Now, number 2 is consistency. You need to be consistent in your classroom and in your school. Now, when we went to Google Classroom as a school, we consistently said we would organize by date. So our date is our topic. I've started adding a bracket and what it's about. Now, I know that it's just massive and you end up with all of these topics in there, but I like to organize it by date. Now, what happens if you have something you didn't finish today? I just drag it up to the next day and they know that's what we're working on in that class that day in order. So I do have it in order that we're going to work on it, and it just makes it simple for them to kind of keep up and know how we're working through things in class. Number 3, use due dates. Now, there are a lot of teachers who don't use them, and that's because they don't want it to show up on their to-do list if it's a bigger project and it makes them feel like they haven't done it or haven't graded it or whatever. Okay, this is not about us, it's about our kids. So it makes it easier for the students to put a due date, so put a due date. Even if you have to keep pushing that due date out, you should use a due date. Or if it's not something that has a due date, use a material if they're not going to turn it in. Number 4, I use icons for each of these. So I have a short Google Doc. I tweeted out a picture of it not too long ago, and it had all the icons that I use. So I have an icon for something when it's a lesson plan. An icon for the bell ringer has a green dot. So if I have a bell ringer and say, hey, jump in there and go into the bell ringer, and they can click on that green dotted icon and go straight to Nearpod or whatever it is I'm teaching with that day. So having those icons has really saved a lot of time because color and pictures just help us retain what we need to do. And especially because I post my lesson plans, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. They don't think it's something they have to do. Number 5 is remember to use the private messages. Private messages is the best way to converse about a particular item because it goes directly to everybody's email. And it also gives documentation for people who may be co-teaching, or if somebody's out sick, a teacher is, then other people can jump in and help. Also, I'm basically a teacher in every single classroom in the whole school, so I'm able to answer the IT questions that kids have when they use private messages instead of slowing things down. So if a kid has a technical question, I use an Alice Keeler tip, use a lot of her tips to put Davis in all caps, and I know that they want me to answer it instead of their regular classroom teacher. I want my teachers to know their job is to be a content expert and let me be the geek. And a lot of them are kind of turning into geeks too, but that's just an easier way to help things. Number 6 is I share my lesson plans every day. I use Planboard. I've talked about that in a previous episode. But when I post that Planboard link to Google Classroom as a material, if you take the hyperlink and you paste it into the description, that hyperlink will go into the Guardian summaries, which leads us to number 7. Use Guardian summaries to your advantage. So parents really need to have those Guardian summaries. And when you paste links into the description field, if you have your permissions set right, the parents can see those links too. So my parents can see the links to those lesson plans. And I've encouraged them to go back and change their settings from weekly to daily during this time period when kids are out and other things are happening. So number 8 is don't grade too soon. So first of all, if you give something a 0, it no longer shows up as missing for the student. And you want to teach the kids to go to Classwork, View My Work, and take a look at that, unless you have Hapara. And if you have Hapara, they can click the little bell on the right-hand side, and all of their private messages and their items that have been graded pop there from all their classes, which is just really easy. But inside Google Classroom, teach them to go to Classwork, View My Work, so they can see if they have work to do. If you don't give the 0 and you just hand it back, it will show up on their missing work report on their to-do list. And a lot of those kids look at the to-do list, which is why you want to have a date on it and not give a 0 and just hand it back and get them to do it. And if you don't put a date, sometimes it doesn't show on that list. That did change for me on my teacher side, and I need to look and see if it changed for students because that could be changing right now. That's been a big problem. Number 9 is break down whatever it is you're doing into smaller video how-tos. So if I teach something in class, I will already have those videos ready and I will paste the links to those in the description. So if someone's at home, they can break down that assignment and do it in pieces. Number 10 is keep common answers in a document. Now, I use Text Expander. One of the most common problems I have found with Google Classroom is what I call a browser mismatch. That little circle you have in your Chrome browser in the top will be one profile, and the little circle down in the main part of the browser will be another profile. So mom or dad might be signed into that browser, and the child has come and used their web browser. This is a browser mismatch. And I have a video on my YouTube channel I created that I send people. But how am I going to go find that video? So I actually use Text Expander, and I've already written about 10 of my most common problems in Google Classroom. And all I have to do for browser mismatch is type ;browser, and that whole little email explanation with a link to the video pops into the private message or the email when the parent says, my child can't do quizzes or my child can't do this or that. The other common problem a lot of times kids have is, for example, on a Kindle, they need to use the Silk browser. So that's an issue that I have in there. And sometimes quizzes or iExcel, it's better if the child goes directly to the site, clicks and logs in with Google, and then goes back to the teacher assignment and clicks and goes through. So I have those typed out very clearly and put into that. You can also put them in Google Docs, or if you use Gmail, they have canned responses, and you can put those canned responses, or even ask your IT director to write those canned responses for you. Really look at them, and then all you have to do is just click it and respond to it if you're using Gmail. Number 11 is take those common answers and put them on a class website or a school website. We have a student help site and a teacher help site, and I have it there for those who will use it. Now, again, some people are going to email you, so that gives you the canned response or the text expander to help make your Google Classroom experience more excellent for both you and for your students. Number 12 is to consider due times. Now, Parkinson's law is that students will expand the time that they take based upon the amount of time they have. So if your assignments are due at 10 o'clock at night, they're going to work till 10. If they're due at midnight, they're going to work till midnight. And if they're due at 3, they'll work till 3. All my assignments are due at 3:30. And you could say, well, what about the kids who are homesick? Well, they know that they're going to have additional time and I'm not going to count it late. But I want the work done during the day. I typically don't give homework. I want it done during class because there's just a lot of stress going on. I know there's other classes that may want to make it due later, but you can decide if you want to allow it later. But I would consider having a much earlier due time. And don't do it on Friday night or Saturday night or Sunday night, because those kids are going to be doing homework on Friday or Saturday and parents are going to be complaining. So I know you're trying to be helpful by giving more time, but really try to help the kids discipline themselves, because by human nature, I think most of us are procrastinators, even me, and probably you, especially me. So And the other thing is consider when you post. So I have a messaged a friend the other day, and I'm a teacher in every single class in my school, and they were posting some assignments at a time that was kind of an odd time. And a lot of kids have notifications turned on. So if you go and you're working late at night, like midnight on a Friday night, and you post an assignment, then that child will get a notification at midnight and they'll say, hey, Miss Davis assigned me something at midnight. Well, no, you don't have to do it at midnight. It's for next week. So I always use schedules. Now, the problem with scheduling is you can't post it to more than one class at a time. So what I do is I go ahead and I schedule everything for the next week. Now, remember, topics don't show until they have a task underneath them. So if I schedule everything for next week to show up on that day, I usually do it about 10 minutes before class starts because I also don't want them doing it in another teacher's class. And I have heard of students doing that. If you post it at 8 o'clock and they have another person's class at 8, they might really find victory in going to your class and it's already done. So, and if you want to do it early, you can, but just remember that they might think that they need to start on it right then. So I always put my posting times about 20 minutes before class starts or 10 minutes before class starts. So then, if they do finish another class early or if they have a, whatever, they could start early if they want to. Usually they don't, but they could. Number 14 is to respond quickly to questions. I want to help students know that I am there. The other thing is I want to prevent what I call helpless hand raising. Now, the form of helpless hand raising that they'll do in Google Classroom is, for example, I had a student last Saturday message me at 7 o'clock at night that he couldn't do such and such and he couldn't do anything until I did whatever. So I responded and I said, I am at the movie. I'll be responding later, but you have everything you need to get this assignment done. And it should be done. And, I talked to him later about, hey, I have the weekend, you have the weekend. And if they know that I'm paying attention, then I can usually stop that behavior. But if they know that you're going to ignore it all weekend, and yes, you need your weekend too, but I have still found that responding quickly and pointing to resources I already have, hey, I already posted a video on that, check this week. Then they can't go back and say, hey, Mom and Dad, I couldn't work on it because Miss Davis didn't respond. But respond quickly to those questions and you will get less and less of those because they know you're there. Now, number 15 is that go to the gear and in your class and show attachments and details because that will show you, how many things are in there and how many have been turned in at a glance. It'll make your stream more useful. But also learn to use the to-do and remember that if students turn work back in, that you need to go into the reviewed column. I also like that now they're showing things that don't have an assignment date, which is so very useful. There are a lot of things out there. I did record, Alice Keeler recorded with me a Google Classroom Duo bootcamp where we show the student and the teacher side of things. That's on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/coolcatteacher. And that will help you also. But these are some of the most common issues that I think will help you if you can do those. So 15 ways to make Google Classroom experience more excellent for everyone. Number 1, habits. Number 2, be consistent across the school and in your classroom. Number 3, use due dates. Number 4, use icons for things in your classroom so they can know what to use for each. Number 5, use private messages. 6, share your lesson plans and put the link in the description. 7, make sure those links are in the description and make sure your parents are subscribed to Guardian summaries on a daily basis. Number 8, don't grade too soon. Hand them back and don't put in those zeros because it'll make them hide on you until you absolutely have to. Number 9, break it down into videos for how-tos and short little videos. If it's a super long video, they won't see it or won't watch it. Number 10, keep common answers or use canned responses. I use Text Expander, which is a little app from a Mac. Number 11, have a class website or school website with common answers. Number 12, consider your due times and Parkinson's Law and the tendency to procrastinate and be consistent with those. Number 13, don't post in times that are going to be a distraction or send a message that you want kids not to have personal time because you want to have personal time too. Number 14, respond quickly to questions to try to get kids to focus on having school during the school day. And number 15, learn how to master that to-do and turn on the attachments and details. Hope this helped. While Google Classroom is great, there are a few things missing. Admin teams are now wanting better analytics. Students say they need everything on one page so they can get one quick view of their tasks. And teachers, we desperately need better monitoring. All of this is possible with the Hapara Instructional Suite that organizes teaching and learning workflows in G Suite and Google Classroom seamlessly. Go to hapara.com/CoolCatTeacher. That's HAPARA.com/CoolCatTeacher to learn more about how Hapara can get your students and teachers the help and support that they need.